Salams, this is People's Dispatch and you're watching the Daily Roundup, our bulletin of some of the top news stories from around the world. Here are today's headlines. Workers in Greece stage a general strike against the cost of living crisis. A new report reveals that the UK military killed far more children in Afghanistan than it earlier admitted to. States in the US vote on ending slavery in the midterm elections. And no fraud in the Brazilian elections, an army report says. First up, Greek workers organized a 24-hour general strike on the 9th of November, staging massive demonstrations against the anti-worker policies of employers as well as the conservative New Democracy-led government. They demanded effective measures to tackle the ongoing cost of living crisis. The protests were called by trade unions such as the All Workers Militant Front, known as PAME, political parties including the Communist Party of Greece, as well as youth groups like the Communist Youth of Greece and the Student Struggle Front, all participated in the demonstrations. Massive gatherings were held in Athens as well as other parts of the country. Protesters demanded an increase in wages and pensions, a cap on the prices of essential foodstuff as well as energy, and an end to the ongoing persecution of workers. Workers from mining company Laco and the Malamatina winery also participated in the strike action. The Greek working class has been protesting against the anti-worker clauses in reforms brought about by Labour Minister Kostas Hatzidakis to the Labour Code, as dictated by the European Union. Since the onset of the crisis triggered by the Russia-Ukraine war, as well as profiteering by multinational energy companies, workers and the poor have been struggling to make ends meet. To mitigate the crisis, unions like PAME have demanded an increase in wages, new collective labour agreements, abolition of VAT, that's value-added tax on consumer goods, taxes on electricity, gas companies, and a cap on fuel prices. Working class and other anti-imperialist sections in the country have also denounced the government's involvement in the transfer of arms and ammunition that are destined for imperialist conflicts. British forces alone have been responsible for killing anywhere between 64 to 135 Afghan children in the 9 years between 2006 and 14, as against the officially acknowledged number of just 16. A report published by the UK-based human rights group Action on Armed Violence indicates these new data points. The AOAV claimed that its figure of the number of children actually killed by UK forces in Afghanistan is based on the calculation of the amount the UK military paid in compensation to victims of its war. The report claims that UK forces paid an average of around £1,600, that's a little over $1,800 to each of the families of the victims. The report claims that even the lower number is 4 times more than previously acknowledged by the UK Ministry of Defence. The AOAV got the actual figures by analysing the documents of compensation dispersion obtained through Freedom of Information requests. Most of these children were killed in air raids carried out by NATO forces, of which the UK was a major part. The organisation also claims that most of the deaths were caused by consequences of poor targeting, overuse of heavy weaponry, or fighting in populated areas, and are not the results of deliberate targeting. Thousands of civilians have, of course, lost their lives in the war in Afghanistan, beginning with the US-led NATO invasion back in 2001. Though there is no single verified figure of civilian casualties in the country for that 20-year period between 2001 and 2021, when all foreign troops, of course, left the country, there are several estimates. According to one, close to 47,000 civilians were killed in this period. Brown University's Cost of War project indicates that the combined areas of Afghanistan and Pakistan have seen the killing of at least 70,000 civilians since 2001. Estimates of how many children have been killed in Afghanistan since the NATO-led invasion also vary. In 2021, the UNICEF claimed that at least 28,500 children have been killed since 2005. According to Save the Children, the figure is even higher at well above 30,000. Save the Children also claimed that at least one child has been killed in Afghanistan every 5 hours since 2001. Both UNICEF and Save the Children do not specify who was responsible for these killings though. According to the UN, between 2017 and 20, when NATO and Afghan forces increased their air raids in the country, over 2,000 civilians were killed and over 1,800 injured in just air raids. This doesn't include casualties caused in ground operations. 5 US states, Oregon, Tennessee, Vermont, Louisiana, and Alabama, voted on ballot measures that would end slavery in these states in the midterm elections held in the US on the 8th of November. The 13th Amendment to the US Constitution, which was ratified back in 1865, abolished slavery. However, it contained a powerful exception. Slavery would be legal as a punishment for crime. As a result, hundreds of thousands of prison workers are held in involuntary servitude, often unpaid and always below minimum wage. Tennessee, Vermont, and Alabama voted yes on ballot measures that would end all exceptions to involuntary, forced, and unpaid labor within prisons, within their respective state boundaries. Oregon's vote is too close to call, with only 66% of the results in so far, but seems to lean towards ending all forms of slavery. Louisiana, meanwhile, rejected a ballot measure known as Amendment 7, which would have changed the current constitutional language that permits prison slavery. In Louisiana specifically, the confusion around the language of Amendment 7 may have been what resulted in its downfall. Some of the ballot measures' original supporters withdrew due to these considerations. The amendment would have changed the Louisiana state constitution's wording from, I quote, "Slavery and involuntary servitude are prohibited except in the latter case as punishment for a crime," end quote. This would have been changed to, and I quote again, "Slavery and involuntary servitude are prohibited," end quote, specifying that this does not apply to the otherwise lawful administration of criminal justice. Prison workers, who many consider modern-day slaves, generate over $11 billion annually by a conservative estimate, despite earning only 13 to 50 cents per hour for their work. 5 states force prisoners to work under threat of punishment. These are Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Mississippi, and Texas. 7 other states pay prisoners nothing for the vast majority of work assignments. These are, again, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Texas. The End the Exception Coalition, which works to abolish the loophole in the 13th Amendment, estimates that every year around $14 billion in wages is stolen from prison workers. And finally, the Brazilian army on Wednesday, the 9th of November, said it found there was no evidence of any fraud in the recently held presidential elections. Its report, which was submitted to the Superior Electoral Court, noted that specialists were satisfied with the results and that the elections did not indicate any existence of any fraud or inconsistency in the electronic voting machines and in the overall electoral process of 2022. The Defense Minister of Brazil was quoted as saying that there were no anomalies in the process, while warning that the electronic voting system is not completely immune to fraud or tampering in the future. Reports also noted that the assessment by the armed forces was carried out only on the electronic voting system and not on other aspects of the process. In the report, the ministry has recommended the creation of a new, separate commission as a matter of urgency to investigate any possible hypothetical future vulnerabilities. It said that the commission should be made up of renowned technicians representing the inspection entities and wider society to ensure that electronic systems are free from malicious code or from any other sort of rigging. After the report was submitted to it, the president of the Electoral Court, Alexander de Moraes, in a statement celebrating the assessment, said that the electronic voting machines used in Brazilian elections are a source of pride for the country, and the recently concluded elections are a testament to their effectiveness, fairness, and transparency in regards to counting and totaling votes. Other organizations and institutions checking the veracity and reliability of election results, such as the Union Court of Auditors, the Organization of American States, and the Brazilian Bar Association, have also come out with similar reports reaffirming that the elections were held without any major irregularities. That's all we have on this episode of the Daily Roundup. As always, we invite you to head to our website, peoplesdispatch.org, for more details on all of these stories. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.